Hi everyone, and welcome to Pasta with Mandy and Owen. Today I'm going to be showing you how I make pasta, and I've only made it a few times this year, but I really do enjoy it and I love eating it. So as we go along. So the inspiration for me came from this Pasta Grannies book. Found some information online, and then I looked it up, and then I ordered it, which I really, really love. There's some really great recipes, but some of the recipes are pretty complicated, but you can always pull some good information out of them. There's really good highlights on all the different grannies that come. They're all from, I think it's Italy. So yeah, they have really great pasta over there, and some of it is just insane. The amount of time that they use to spend on it is just crazy. So we're going to go through, this is just the typical egg pasta. So it's about 1 egg for every 100 grams of flour, and I use a combination of semolina flour and white flour. And this recipe here was from the Pasta Grannies cookbook. I went online and got it so that you guys could have it if you wanted it. This is where I got it from pastagrannies.com, and this is Making Pasta with Nona Marie Part 2. I don't know what Part 1 actually was, but it goes through her directions on how she makes it. So it's pretty much exactly what I do, except that she just makes it more with the hands-on way. So now this is the way that I make pasta, and what I use is I use my good old KitchenAid. And then I need the bowl that comes in it. I just use a hard wooden spatula, or not wooden, sorry, just this plastic. And then I use the bread kneader as well. Some of the other things that I will use, so here is my semolina flour. It looks a lot like cornmeal, but finer. So it's that kind of yellowy flour or yellowy color to it. And then it's more gritty than regular flour. And then I use half semolina flour and half regular white flour. That's for my regular pasta. I made lasagna pasta sheets the other day, and then I used 00 flour. So here's two different kinds. One comes from Save-On, one comes from Askews. You can also buy it at the bulk store in town. And it's a really fine flour. So I know flour seems fine, but it's softer and it's finer. I don't know what the difference is, but it made really good pasta. Pasta, the first things that we do are prepare all the ingredients. We measure the ingredients on the scale, we mix it, and then we knead it by hand. We wrap it in plastic wrap and let it sit for 20 minutes to 2 hours. Then we roll, cut, and flip. And today it's mostly been me, but usually I have my super duper helper right here, Owen, and he rolls out all of my pasta for me, which is super handy because a lot of times I'm making double and triple batches. And he's got these right here, these muscles, where I get tired, he keeps going. So when I mix my pasta, I do it with my mix master right here. It's usually because it's easier than doing it by hand, and I usually also make a couple batches at a time. When you use a mix master, you have to make sure that you have enough materials in here, otherwise it doesn't mix very well. So then the first thing that I do is I'm going to use my scale. So I put my bowl on my scale, and then I zero it out. And for every 100 grams, I'm going to put in an egg. So I usually go half and half. So I use about half of the semolina flour and half of the white flour. So I'm going to make about 600 grams today. So we're going to do about 300 of the semolina flour. That's about good. So there's 320 grams of semolina flour, and then I can use a little bit less of white flour if I want. So then I'm going to put the white flour in here. If you guys can see what I'm doing. So that's just over 6. So I could take some out of there. That's about perfect. And then I just take that off my scale and give it a good mix. Now, to be like what they would do traditionally is they make a well. So that's what I do in my mix master here is I just make a well. And then I'm going to add all my eggs. So I'm going to add all 6 at once here. So I actually almost always add an extra egg. I probably don't need to, but I just like it because I like it a little more moist than really heavy and stiff. And one of the other things I forgot to do when I was mixing my flour and my semolina flours, I didn't add salt. So you know what? If I forget, I just add it in now. So I probably put in a little bit more than that. So that's good. Plus you'll cook it in salted water anyway. Now to make it as much as the real as possible, or the traditional way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly increase my bowl, and then I'm going to take this and just put it in here gently, and you'll see how that works here. So like this. And it starts mixing it really nicely, just a little bit, just like if you were looking at it traditionally, and they have it on the table and they start putting flour in a little bit at a time. So now it's all the way up. And then I just take my spatula and I start flipping it into the center and just work my way around. So as you can hear, it's getting a little more tough in there, and I don't know if you can see really well, but I'm just making sure that all of the flour gets incorporated into the dough. And then once it gets incorporated, I'll leave it to knead for about 4 or 5 more minutes, and then I'll finish it off by hand. So if you find that the dough is too moist, you can just add a little bit of extra flour. You can either add regular white flour, I added a little bit extra, or some semolina. The other thing is if you find that it's too tough, or not tough, but too dry or too stiff, you can add either an extra egg, but sometimes that's too much. So even just drops of water, a little bit at a time, to get the right consistency will work. So now I've let it go for about 5 minutes, and I'm just going to turn my timer off. And then I just take up it here. It is a little bit stiff, but that's okay. And then I'm just going to knead it for a couple minutes. So it's really no different than kneading bread. This is what it looks like right now. It's quite a stiff dough. I just put a little bit of flour, and I'm just going to knead it. So then after 2 minutes of kneading, it's actually really quite smooth, and it looks really nice, like a nice round ball. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in plastic wrap and let it sit for at least 2 hours. So as you can see, I just wrapped it in some plastic wrap here, just like this. It's nice and soft, you can feel it, looks really good. And then I'll just let it sit for a couple hours. So now it's been a couple hours. Our dough is actually quite a bit softer, but I think it makes it more elastic if you let it sit for a while. So we're going to take our dough, we're going to need some flour and our rolling pin. I roll it, I don't put it through a pasta maker thing. And then I use some sheets. So I'll show you what the sheets are for in a sec. So I take my pasta and I just flatten it out a bit, and then I divide it. So this one I've divided into 4 sections. So I have one section right here, and I'm just going to kind of flatten it out with my hands a bit. And then always make sure that you have lots of flour because it will start to stick. And if there's flour on it, it doesn't matter. And then I just start rolling it out. I just keep rolling it until it gets to quite a big roundness and a little bit thin. I'll show you in a minute. So as you're rolling it out here, you're going to constantly want to put a little bit of flour on the top, and then make sure you have flour on the bottom as well, and then just flip it over. And then a little bit of flour on top, flour on the bottom, and flip it over. So I've got it to a fairly big circle, as you can see. It's going to be kind of hard to tell how thin it is, but you can kind of tell there. And really this is just preference, depending on how thin you want it. So then the next thing I do is I put As you can see, I have my sheets here, which are just old clean sheets that I've cut up. And I put my pasta on there. I flatten it out like so, and I like it a little bit longer, the sheet, because then I can put it over the edge. I can hold it with my belly so that as I'm pushing out, the sheet stays in place. And I give it one more final out the top here. And then I make sure to put a little bit of flour on it, all over the top. And then I kind of let it sit for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Well, maybe not that long, but while I get my next chunk of dough ready. So I'm going to do another chunk of dough, let that one sit. One of the other things you always have to make sure with the dough that you have down here is always keep it covered. You don't want it to dry out. If it dries out, it gets crusty and it's hard to roll. So I'm going to go ahead and roll this one while that one sits. So you can see I have finished this other one here and my last one is sitting. So I'm just going to put a little more flour on it like so. Then maybe I'll see if I can bring this closer. So here's my dough. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip it over itself. Like so, and you don't want to push it too hard, and you'll see why in a minute. And then I just always cut my dough. It seems like it's the easiest way to go. And you can cut it whatever length you want, whatever thickness that you want. If you're going to do fettuccine, then you can cut it a little thicker, spaghetti thinner. I've also made lasagna noodles, so I would just cut those maybe about 3 or 4 inches, or that's what I did the first time. You could do them in sheets as well. I'm just going to go ahead and finish cutting this. Now this is one of my favorite parts, and it doesn't always work, so it might not work today. But what then I do is I just take my knife in between all my sheets and flip them open. So that's why you don't want to push it down too deep, because you need to have it flipped open. So just like so, stick your knife in there like that, and voila. So I got the next one going on here. We'll just see if we can get this to go. This is really the fun part. And eating it. Eating it is fun too. So then I just flip it like this. And then I move it over to, I don't know if you guys will be able to see this, but I have another sheet over beside my stove, and I move it from here over to the stove, and every once in a while I'll put a little flour in it and keep flipping it so that it doesn't stick together, and at the end of the night before I go to cook it, it's perfect. So I'll just move it over here and then I'll show you guys what it looks like. So then I move it to here, and every time I put more on there, I just flip it all so that it doesn't stick to each other, and keep it out here, and it never becomes fully dried. At the end of the night, if I don't cook it all, then I will just put it in a bag in the freezer, in a big bag with lots of air, close it up, and it's perfect for next time. Last time what I did with the lasagna sheets was I rolled them out. I put plastic wrap in between each sheet, rolled it up, and then stuck that in the freezer, pulled them out, cut them. Perfect. You wouldn't even know the difference, except it's way better than store-bought pasta. But other than that, it worked out just great. So I just kind of flip it up every so often. Might put a little bit of flour, sprinkle it over it so it doesn't stick. Here, the carbonara is mainly just eggs and Parmesan, and then you put it a little bit of hot water as you're pulling your pasta out, but you don't cook it because you don't want the eggs to look like scrambled eggs. It just gives it a beautiful coating, a silky coating, and then you can put whatever else you want on there. So let's see if I can get a good picture of this. So that's the final product, and then we're going to go to eat, and that will be the best part of the whole day. That's the best part. Bon appetit. Here's dinner for tonight. Salad, pasta, pesto, and Owen. Okay, Owie, take a big bite of your pasta. And how is it?
Good.